What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 159 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk about Volume 2 of Planetary. Can you see that? There we go. This collects issues 7 through 12 of Planetary by Warren Ellis and John Cassaday from the Wildstorm universe. And this volume is really interesting. It gives us a lot more answers to some of the questions that were seeded in Volume 1, but it also gives us even more questions. Just as soon as you find out something, you get another mystery that is just waiting to be unwrapped. This has some very interesting stuff in it. It introduces more loving homages to characters that you recognize from pop culture. There is a James Bond knockoff here. There is another character who is introduced as being part of the Planetary field team before the main characters recruited Elijah Snow into the field team at the beginning of the series. So we get to see a planetary mission that happened sometime before the series began, and that leaves us with more questions that we're not really sure what's going on there. We do get to find out who the fourth man is at the end of this volume. I'm not going to tell you who it is. It is a very interesting reveal, and it does, like I said, it leaves you with more questions even when you get some answers to the previous questions. Really, there's nothing that I dislike about this book except for the very first issue. The first issue is probably one of the worst issues of this entire series. We get this character named Jack Carter, who is basically supposed to be a knockoff of John Constantine, who, if I'm not mistaken, I think that Warren Ellis has written some John Constantine. I'm not sure if he had written the character before he was writing Planetary, but we find out that this character, Jack Carter, has died, and he had a relationship with one of the members of the field team, and basically the entire issue is just this scathing review of the Thatcher regime from Great Britain in the 1980s. Basically, it's just this political rant in the form of a comic book. It's not really a story. We don't get an actual story there. We have Jaquita Wagner just going for pages and pages talking about why Thatcher was just so incredibly awful and how Americans can't possibly understand what the Brits went through in the 1980s, which I don't really need that. I don't want your political opinions. I don't want you to be so blatant in how you dislike this politician from the 80s. Sure, politics do inform stories, and they inform how the writer writes their stories and how the artist is going to portray their artwork, but I don't need you to just come right out and say, Thatcher was awful. Here are the awful things that they did. Here is why Great Britain had the pop culture that it had and why it was so dark in this time period. It's because they were going through some dark stuff. I don't need any of that. That was probably the worst issue of the series, at least what I've read so far. It's definitely the worst of what I've read so far in these two volumes. And then at the end of the issue, it turns out Jack Carter's still alive, and now he becomes Spider Jerusalem from Warren Ellis's Transmetropolitan. It's really dumb. Aside from that issue, this volume is still very good. I think that it ups the ante from the previous volume. Again, if you ignore the first issue collected here, we get some really good stuff here. We get some issues that explore the mythology of this world. We get a little bit more insight to what's going on with the Planetary organization. We get some answers to questions we had, but we also get some more questions. I really like this volume. If you have read Volume 1 and for whatever reason you haven't kept going, I highly recommend that you read Volume 2. Things only get better here. Again, ignoring that first issue that's collected in this book. So that's about all I have to say. There's not much more that I have to say about this. Anyway, I hope that you guys liked this review, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow to talk about another book. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.